This is Recreated WrestleMania 2 edition. I want to thank you for the feedback or the comments for WrestleMania 1, but let's hopefully, with the improvements I've been given, let's take a look and see how it works out. Again, a few quick facts. The event took place on April 7th, 1986. 3 separate venues on the same night: New York, Illinois, and California. A battle royal between the NFL and WWF took place at this event. This was Hogan's second of 8 main events. 45 wrestlers participated in this event. That's double the size of last year at WrestleMania 1. As always, there's a few rules. I'm only going to be reviewing matches that made it to TV. At the end of the event, we're going to run the stats and see how much this event could be recreated. I'm only going to judge on accuracy in the attire representation and also if the match could even be recreated in any figure form. I'm not including managers or valets, and I will not include customs. They must be Mattel released, either online or in store, or at least marketed to mass release. We're going to see how many matches versus how accurate representation during this. And again, I'm not the greatest at this. I've looked at a few things. Hopefully this helps out. Let's begin. This is WrestleMania 2, recreated. So WrestleMania 2 Match 1 opened up with Mr. Wonderful, again, RIP, versus Don the Rock, or Magnificent Don Muraco, however you want to choose his alias before, his moniker. Now this match could be recreated in figure form. However, it was not accurate. Don Muraco did not wrestle in his blue trunks. I believe it was a black trunks with a different colored pair of boots. So this is near the end of his run. In fact, this might almost be his last match, his last WrestleMania, as he was getting old and getting on injuries and just didn't really last much longer. Same with Orndorff. Orndorff would not be around, I think, after WrestleMania 2 as well, which is kind of interesting to go from main eventing one year to, they call it curtain jerking, the first year, the opening match. So talk about a real big fall from grace, in a sense. Some people consider it an honor to get out there and warm up the crowd. But again, you have to look at it. This was 3 venues, and your match drew first in the first venue for the first hour. So, I mean, it could be an honor, or it could be you falling down the card. That's up to interpretation on what you think is worth it. Match 2, though, of WrestleMania 2 was the WWF Intercontinental Championship match. So for the second year in a row, the Intercontinental Championship was on the line. This time, brand new champion, brand new challenger. You had champion Macho Man, ooh yeah, the Macho Man, Randy Savage, versus George the Animal Steele. This match could be recreated. However, no Macho Man WrestleMania 2 attire has been made. He did not have this attire. I think he had more of a pinkish attire. His robe was different. Obviously, Miss Elizabeth, they only have like 1 or 2 of her. One's from SummerSlam, one's from the wedding, I do believe, or possibly even, yeah, it's from the wedding because she's in white. So we don't have her, and again, we don't count managers. But essentially, you can recreate these guys. Just Macho won't be in his accurate attire. So it would not be 100% accurate. But you know what's nice is you've got a Hasbro. Macho Man, you've got an LJN George Steele. You also have LJN Macho Man. You don't have an Hasbro George Steele, to my knowledge. You also don't have M'Baka either, bone crushing action. But Jakks has them, and so does Elite or Mattel Elite. Only Elite. There is a basic Macho, but only Elite of George Steele. You can also get George Steele in the Legend of Pro Wrestling, but there's no Macho Man. He was very exclusive. He didn't really like to sign away a lot of rights. I mean, he was in WCW figures. He was in a little bit of WWF figures. Then he kind of just dropped off for a while until Mattel reached out to him. Jakks never, I don't know if they did reach out to him, but you never saw a Jakks Macho Man, which is a little bit unfortunate. We had to wait till 2010, and then unfortunately he passed in 2011. But you could recreate it. It would, however, not be accurate. In case you're wondering, Macho Man retained his title. Then we've got WrestleMania 2 Match 3. Jake the Snake Roberts versus George Wells. Who is George Wells, you might ask? Well, George Wells was a guy who took on Jake the Snake Roberts in pretty much essentially a squash match. It was interesting too because George Wells had a better physique. To my knowledge, he was in better shape than Jake. Jake was never a bodybuilder type. He had charisma and he could draw in people, and it was unique because he just had the cooler gimmick. George Wells was just a body to take the DDT. Jake, however, is represented in his almost accurate attire. The face might be more older Jake when he was more younger, but I mean that's literally the trunks. When I looked at the thing, I was like, oh yeah, that new Legends Jake they just produced a little bit ago, that looks just exactly like it. Maybe a little more detail on this one, but I mean, it's hard to tell from the pictures. Maybe I should watch the WrestleManias in its entirety and freeze it. But long story short, he DDT'd him, put the snake on George Wells. George Wells does not have a figure. I don't know if he ever will. Again, he's in the same boat as David Sammartino. He's not on anyone's top 10 lists. He might be on top 10 most obscure wrestlers to wrestle WrestleMania. But then again, there's so many other people that wrestle WrestleMania that didn't have action figures. I personally would love to see an Ultimo Dragon. I know he has a figure in Jax, but I'd love to see an Ultimo Dragon from WrestleMania 20. Not going to happen, but it'd be a cool thing to kind of see because even though he slipped and fell and didn't have the greatest thing, he had a cool looking attire. On to the next match. Now, because of Mattel, this is solely on Mattel. Mattel created this match to a T. The only thing, not to, no pun intended, Mr. T. The only thing missing is the stools. I mean, you've got the boxing match, the boxing attire is there, Piper's angry, T's angry, the hands to take off the gloves if you need to, the gloves are on them, their robes are there. The only thing that's missing is the stool so you can throw it at Mr. T after Piper gets furious at him, then body slams him and ends the match in a DQ finish. And then of course you have that very infamous promo afterwards from Piper later on, who basically said, if I wanted, if I wanted to have a picnic, T, I'd have packed a lunch. But basically, because of Mattel, this can be created right there. It's perfectly now. It's not the cheapest thing. I think it was last I saw was at $50. It could have gone up. So if you're a diehard, want to be authentic, collect them, this is a perfect set because this is a WrestleMania 2 recreated match right here in a box. It's flawless. Now, the second championship match of the night was the WWF Women's Championship. And hey, look, it's Fabulous Moolah. This is the figure I talked about in my last video. She's here now. This is the only figure of her. This is probably the only figure of her ever. Again, I'm not going to go into it, but there's allegations, there's accusations, there's testimonies. But sadly, there's no Velvet McIntyre. So if you're trying to recreate this match, I do believe Velvet did win. I may be wrong though. It might be Fabulous Moolah. I need to check that up again. Again, I'm not producing the spoiler alert. There's tons of pay-per-views out there where people watch that stuff. These are about figures, but there's no Velvet McIntyre. There's a Drew McIntyre, but they're not related. So no Velvet McIntyre. Again, it'd be cool if we got the proper belt design and if we got a Velvet McIntyre so we could recreate this match, but I don't see people clamoring for her on any list as well. Up next is WrestleMania 2 Match 6. Corporal Kirchner, hope I spelled that right, versus Nikolai Volkov. Now, this match could be recreated and is very accurate. Now, I'm looking at the picture and I'm looking at the figure, and yes, there's a little bit of a difference. He's wearing camo. Do I expect the figures to match everything perfectly? Yes and no. If it's a camouflage attire, I'm going to err on the side of technology back then wasn't the most sophisticated, so that might have been all they could afford to put deco into it. Even figures that are accurate, if they've got camo, I never, look at an Edge figure on camo and go, no, that camo is just not in the right spot. So that's pretty much accurate as it can be. I mean, the Nikolai's got the blue streak on the side of the trunks. On that figure, I have that figure. I've seen it. He didn't change his attire much. This is the only way you're going to get Corporal Kirshner is if you're an LJN fan or you find him out there. He didn't get any love in anywhere else. Of course, he didn't really exist much longer in the WWF at the time, WWE, whatever you want to prefer to call it. He didn't really appear much after this. In fact, I'm trying to think back, looking at his WrestleMania 3 book. I don't think I saw him in there. So he might have been. I'll double check when it comes time for WrestleMania 3. But this is the LJN figure. This is about as accurate as camo you're going to get back in that day and age. I mean, obviously he's not wrestling with a beret on, but then again, they didn't have removable parts like they do nowadays. Toys are very more complex than they used to be. So I'm going to count it as, can you recreate this? Yes. Is it accurate? Given the time frame, I'm going to say it's accurate. Now, this one was a chore to put together. WrestleMania 2, Match 7, the Battle Royal, the NFL versus the WWF in a Battle Royal. Now, as you see, I found a few actual figures of players involved in the Battle Royal, including William the Refrigerator Perry down there in G.I. Joe form. Apparently, he was a mail-away exclusive. I never knew about that. When I searched these football players up, I was surprised I found a few of them. Now, I did find some representation. No Dan Spivey figure. Ted Arcidi is an LJN. It's the only figure of him you're going to find. There is a Haku that pretty much matches, or that might be Kid Tonga, I think it was at the time. It wasn't Haku yet. I think it was Kid Tonga. That's the closest you're going to find is in the Black Card series of '89, which, if you know LJN, that was near the end of their run. It's got to be a hard one to find, I would think. Then you got Hillbilly Jim. Hillbilly Jim, any figure you put of his is going to match. You know, he only wrestled in overalls. I threw this one in there because I think I already had the Elite somewhere else in a different line, possibly in WrestleMania 3 against King Kong Bundy. Iron Sheik, I think he was in orange tights. He might not have been. I mean, I already had him. I know he wasn't in pants. I think he might have been in pants. I think he was still in trunks at this point. Then you got Big John Studd. There's that brand new one. Then you got the Killer Bees, another team that I'd love to see Mattel create, if you will. Then you got Tony Atlas. Hey, we got Rocky Johnson, but no Tony Atlas, so that's unfortunate. Of course, Rocky Johnson's nowhere to be found in this. He was long since retired by then. Then, of course, you got Bruno Sammartino. Earlier, I did apologize. I said he wasn't there. He is. He did wrestle. I think he was in blue trunks. Probably a little older than this. I mean, this is a good, like, 60s representation. He was definitely almost 20 years removed from that time, so he was definitely in the more elderly senior citizen status. One accuracy was Andre was almost accurate, but the Hart Foundation, Jim and Brett, in the blue and the black stripes, this is before they would become the pink and black attack. So this match could not be recreated. However, many attires are accurate. There's definitely a few. Obviously, the football players are out of the question. Those guys just wrestle in generic shorts and shirts, muscle shirts, belly shirts. I think a few guys had the little shirt that goes up to their just above their their tummies, basically. Which was the style back then. So you can recreate it, but you can't recreate it. Excuse me, and it's not accurate. But if you got a few of those new football player figures, you can't really just say who they are. Boom, there you go. But if you want the wrestling side of it, even that's not possible. There's still 3 guys that don't have figures. I'm not counting the NFL players, but there's 3 guys that don't, and at the end of the card, you're going to find out who those 3 are. Oh, if you're wondering too, it came down to, I do believe, the Hart Foundation and Andre threw them both out and won the whole thing. Now we have the match 8 of WrestleMania 2, the WWF World Tag Team Championship. The champions were the Dream Team, that's Brutus the Barber Beefcake and Greg Valentine, versus the challengers, the British Bulldogs, Dynamite Kid, and Davey Boy Smith. Now, I chose to choose LJN figures just because I was trying to find the closest representation I could for Beefcake. We do have one closest in Jakks Pacific. I think with Greg, we could do a Jax as well. The Bulldogs, I don't believe we've ever had the appropriate attire for both of them. Um, I did want to include the tag belts, which I do not believe in were the accurate tag belts. I think by then they'd gone on to the standard ones of the old WWF tag belts that lasted throughout the Attitude Era up until around 2001 when they switched them to the Raw tag belts and they created the SmackDown tag belts. But this is a cool set. Again, if you're an LJN fan, I'm sure this is a very hard to find set nowadays, especially if it's in the box mint. Of course, it's not mass released yet, but there will be a Dynamite Kid coming out in Mattel-ish style in the future, or possibly. This is pending, of course. Bulldog just also came out with the Mattel, the Davey Boy Smith. Jax has a Dynamite and Davey Boy 2-pack set with their Union Jack flag on the back. There's a classic superstars of the Bulldog and Dynamite in blue and red, which they didn't change colors. They usually wore the same type. I think it was like a light blue color when they went for the titles and won. Obviously, I didn't include an Ozzy Osbourne figure. Again, no managers, no special guests, that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's a statue of him out there somewhere if you wanted to have him go British Bulldogs forever. But that was not that's not the case in this situation. But if you're wondering, British Bulldogs won, became the tag team champions. I believe they had a reign for a little while, and then it kind of went downhill. As you know, there's an infamous situation if you watch other reviews where I believe Dynamite got knocked in the mouth with a roll of quarters by the Rougeau brothers, or Jacques Rougeau, after a prank was played on them by somebody else, and it got to the point where Vince said, hey, look, you guys got to stay away from each other. And then not long after that, Dynamite was gone, Davey was gone. Davey came back, became the British Bulldog, trademarked the name, and Dynamite pretty much hated him ever since until his untimely death about, I want to say, almost 10 years ago. I didn't look it up. If that's something you're interested in me commenting on later on or giving those kind of facts, I'll gladly do that again. I'm just reviewing the toys and if the toys can be made, or if the matches can be done with the toys. Then we got match 9. Now, match 9 was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Again, tights, not trunks. And I think he did wrestle this time in tights, not trunks this time. And against Hercules. Now, there was a Hercules figure. It only exists in LJN format. It's pretty much based on his WrestleMania 2 look, because he really never wore that gladiator type deal again. Later on, he became just more of a jobber to the stars. He formed a tag team, Power and Glory. Never won the tag belts. He would get beat by Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 4. By then, he's in like blue trunks. So this is the only version of Hercules, and the only version we've ever had of Hercules, Hernandez. And so, can you recreate it with LJNs? Yes. Is it accurate? No, it's not. I do believe Hercules is accurate, but Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is not. I think he was in tights. Again, I'll post a picture if need be, but I don't think it was the proper color. Not to say that there might not be. If you want me to go back and look, I can look into it. But when I was looking through, I don't think it was. I think it was. Actually, it might have been, but I'll have to take a look. It might still be trunks because I'm trying to think. He's only worn red. It might have been green. I know they haven't done a green Ricky Steamboat figure yet, even though people have probably been clamoring for that to match the Ric Flair, which sadly Ric Flair just got released today, or just asked for his release. So who knows? We're going to see more Ric Flair figures in the future. But yeah, so can you recreate it? Yes. Is it accurate? No, it's not currently. And if it is, I will update it in an updated video, and I will apologize for that in the future. Now you've got WrestleMania 2 Match 10. This is Adrian Adonis versus Uncle Elmer. Sadly, this match can't happen. And I don't see it ever happening. Adrian Adonis, this is obviously, he didn't look like this during WrestleMania 2. He had more of a black attire, black trunks, blonde hair, but more of a biker look. He was still tough, kind of tough man. Then he went flamboyant. Nothing wrong with that. He just went very loud, very bright, and became more of a character. Uncle Elmer, again, this is before my time. The reason I don't remember this stuff very vividly, or Uncle Elmer in general, was I wasn't born yet. So I do remember he was involved in some sort of wedding angle in old WWF, like back in the day. The match was not very good. I do believe Adrian did end up winning. I could be wrong though. Uncle Elmer, from what I did see the match, it was not very long. It was not very technical savvy. You won't find anyone's greatest technical wrestling lists. It was pretty almost like a car crash. Like you didn't want to see it, but you couldn't help but look at it. But no, you can't recreate it. Uncle Elmer has not been made. We don't count customizers. And to my knowledge, you're not going to see an Uncle Elmer on, again, just like San Martino, just like George Wells. He's up there on that list of, he wrestled here. So, and finally, but we have WrestleMania 2 Match 11. Now this match, now you're going to see these figures and go, huh, where are these from? Well, the Funks, Dory and Terry Funk, they had figures. Terry Funk has figures in Mattel. He's had a Jakks and he's had a Mattel Elite. But Dory has only had a Japan figure. You said mass retail. Well, Japan's got a lot of people, and these are very mass-produced in Japan. They're very expensive to get over here into the States, unless you find somebody who's already collected them or went to Japan and bought a bunch of them. I'm told they're not super expensive over there when you buy them there, but when you try to have them shipped over here, that's when you're looking at a pretty penny. A while back, I ended up buying a lot of these just because I wanted a cool little display piece. Looking back, wasn't the smartest investment. I ended up selling them off later on when I realized I don't really want to collect statues. But Junkyard Dog and Tito, these are close representations. This is the closest I could find to the representations. So you could recreate it. Obviously, the Japan figures have no movement. They're just miniature little versions of LJN. So Junkyard and Tito would tower over them and can actually do moves, whereas these two would just be kind of stuck in their poses. So it would be a pretty abysmal playing experience. You would have no real moves to be able to do. It's like literally just grabbing a statue and throwing it around. But if you wanted to recreate it, at least in just picture form, there's your Funks. Dory and Terry Funk. And finally, the WrestleMania 2 main event, the WWF World Heavyweight Championship Steel Cage match. The champion, Hulk Hogan, versus the challenger, King Kong Bundy. That was my attempt at doing a 1950s promotional announcer guy. But this match could be recreated, even with proper steel cage in a few forms. Now, Jakks made the blue bars, and Mattel made the blue bars. And if I remember correctly, there might be a ring out there, probably from the Hasbro days or the LJN days. I may not be positive about that, but I think they have the blue bar cage. What I've done is taken a picture here of King Kong versus Hulk Hogan. That's not the proper belt. That's the WrestleMania 3 looking belt. I do remember the 86 belt of WrestleMania 2 had a little bit more of a different design. A lot more flags were posted onto it to represent more of the world. This is obviously the WrestleMania 3 defining moments Hulk Hogan. But it's pretty close. I mean, Hogan wore pretty much the same attire. King Kong Bundy, again, black singlet. The knee pads may not be the accurate knee pads, but this is the Mattel King Kong Bundy. This is the one that goes for now 150 plus. So if you have this and you want to keep it, if anything happens to it, to replace it's going to be very expensive. And to my knowledge, they don't have the license to make him anymore. You can always go with an alternative and get a Jakks figure, which is just as big as him, just not nearly as mobile as an Elite would be. It's still pretty cool looking though. I think there's 2 King Kong Bundys in the Jakks line. You've got some LJNs of King Kong Bundy. You have a Legends of Pro Wrestling Bundy out there. So you could recreate the WrestleMania 2 main event. So in a card with many matches this was, at least you can recreate the main event. Just like you can recreate the main event of WrestleMania 1, we can at least recreate WrestleMania 2's main event. So how did we do? Well, here's the stats. You could not recreate this event, as 4 people are missing. Now, I'm not counting the NFL guys. They are not wrestlers. Okay, if you collect wrestling or football players, great. Let me know who I missed. But there's 4 people missing. We talked about Velvet McIntyre. I don't collect the females, but I'm sure people need her. Pedro Morales, please, Mattel, if somebody's ever seen this, if somebody ever gets an idea of this, make a Pedro Morales. We have almost every world champion, but we've never had a Pedro Morales. He's a former world champion. I think he's a former Intercontinental champion. I think he might be a tag champion. He might be one of the first almost Grand Slam champions. Not positive. I haven't studied the guy. I just know that he was a world champion. We have Ivan Koloff out there in Jack's form, not Mattel, unfortunately, but Pedro was a world champion of WWF, WWE. He should have a figure. That's my rambling. Dan Spivey. Now I prefer his Waylon Mercy gimmick. I think that was a cool thing. It was a precursor to the Bray Wyatt. I'm told Bray Wyatt even talked to Waylon Mercy. That's the legend. That's the emphasis on the Bray Wyatt characters is Husky Harris. I'm not going to say his real name, but he talked to Dan Spivey and basically told him, hey, try this gimmick out. It didn't work for me because New Gen was still kind of a southern gentleman with a dark side, and it would have worked, but Waylon, apparently Dan Spivey was too injured or too damaged from past wrestling, and eventually he just retired. So it'd be cool to see a Waylon Mercy or even a Dan Spivey. And then finally, Uncle Elmer. I'm sure someone enjoyed his work. I mean, I sure someone enjoyed his work. That's all I can say about that. I didn't see him. I've only seen 1 or 2 matches. Now, can we create this? Can we recreate it? Well, only 66%. Mattel had 24 figures that you could use, basic and elite, for 68%. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, wait a minute. That's more than what you can recreate. Yeah, remember, some of the people don't have figures ever. And Mattel has some people that Jakks won't have. Obviously, we have to take into consideration the fact, too, that football players were part of this show. Even though I'm not counting them or trying to find out who they were still technically a part of this. So there's always going to be a little bit of a discord because you have pretty much almost all the wrestlers except for these 4. But you don't have all the football players. You're missing a ton of football players. I couldn't even find pictures of some of the players. And again, they didn't have figures. They've never had figures. I mean, a few have those figures I showed the pictures of. We had the William the Refrigerator Perry G.I. Joe exclusive figure I was able to find. But that's pretty much it. And as far as Jakks, again, counting only RA, CS, and DA, 27 figures, 77%. Now, here's the interesting thing. Of all the people, though, LJN has 31 figures. They have the highest rate. You can recreate 88% of this whole show. Now, again, not accurate because the attires won't match, but they've got guys like Ted Arcidi and Hercules Hernandez. So if you wanted to try to recreate it, LJN's where you're going to want to go if you want to create an entirely only one group. I didn't really include the Hasbro because, again, those were near the early 90s into the new gen. Well, not even the new gen. I'd call it the ending of Hulkamania era, I guess is what we'd call it. It wasn't the golden age. It was pretty much the exodus of all the big name players until you start to the new gen. So, I mean, there's not really a term for that. I know the new gen kind of started around the 94 range before you had the golden era, but the golden era didn't last until the 90s. By the time Warrior in 91, it was business starting to decline. So that era, or that small period of time, is when people started leaving. But if you wanted to recreate WrestleMania 2, 31 figures of LJN will be your go-to. How accurate is it? 25%. Now this video's gone long enough, so now skedaddle. But I want to thank you again. If you like this, please leave a comment. I welcome suggestions. Again, I'm doing this as a passion of mine. Maybe I'll review figures in the future. Maybe I won't. I want to thank you again and comment again, and check back again soon for WrestleMania 3.